Anan, welcome to Diaspora Food Stories. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Uh, I'm very good. This day, I must say, is a very important day to people for people of African descent. This is the day of people of African descent. A lot of people are not aware as yet, but this day, hopefully in the future, will become the day that we could celebrate as people of African descent, whether on the continent or whether in the diaspora,
Hmm.
the day of people of African descent. I know a lot of people not aware of it. But this day comes a century after the Universal Negro Improvement Association held a conference on August the 31st, 1920, in Liberty
Oh,
Hall in New York, Harlem neighborhood.
wow.
It have a history behind, but I think this is the might be the third or the second year of celebration. We, as people of African descent, need to honor this day, the 31st of August, because of the importance of our unity.
Right.
I like to get past that, and I give thanks to the Almighty and the spirits of our ancestors for having me here with my sister Sheree, speaking about my experience. And I'm so honored to be here. Thank you.
Well, I'm honored to have you. You're like a powerhouse up in Toronto and just amazing work that I can't wait to dig into and share with our listeners. And so we're going to go back as I love to do because I want our listeners to get to know who you are in your journey, which I think is so important because we all have journeys of people of African descent and they're so powerful and they're so inspiring. So I'm excited. So thank you for joining me again.
Thank you for being here.
So we're going to take it back to the birthplace, to where you grew up, and that is in Guyana. So tell us
Yes.
about that lovely, beautiful Caribbean island.
Now, my dear sister, I must correct you.
Oh,
Guyana is on the north coast of the Amazon rainforest on the South American
got
continent. We
okay.
are part of the America's mainland.
Nice.
It's on the north coast of the Amazon rainforest, Guyana. The
Okay.
reason why we is associated with the island because we are part of the Caribbean and people refer to the Caribbean as the Caribbean island.
Mm-hmm.
But because of Guyana's colonization
Mm-hmm.
by the British, we are part of the Caribbean and the only English speaking country in South of America. So,
Wow.
so back to your question of Guyana.
And thank you
I
for
like to tell the
that.
young people.
Very important.
Okay,
Thank you for that.
yes, for the young people, I who growing up now, especially in North America and in Guyana, growing up was such a special time. You know what I mean? Global warming, climate change, and all this stuff. Like we didn't have a care in the world, but
Mm-hmm.
just grow up and
Mm-hmm.
do what children do as children and as teenagers. It was such a wonderful experience. I grew up
Wonderful.
with my mother and father. My father, he was a journalist when I was growing up. Among many other things, he was a land surveyor, he was a photographer, and he was an exceptional musician.
Okay.
Not not popular music, but within the church, as most of us, our background in music comes from the church.
Mm-hmm.
He was a choir master and he was an organist at the St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. My mother, I like to say this is the God angel. This is the angel that the Almighty sent on the earth to be around me. She was a seamstress, but much more than a seamstress, you know. And I have three other brothers. One pass on. He is the musical genius of our family, Iwata. And I have two older brothers, Derek and Reggie. And we are known in Guyana as the musical family. So
Nice.
so I grew up as normal teenager, in the city, right in the heart of the city. Such a beautiful experience. And I went to high school. Then I did some homeschooling. Uh, and growing up with all these beautiful experiences of picking mangoes and other fruits and going on the seawall and bathing in the ocean. That doesn't happen now because for some reason the coast close to the city is not a place where people swim, but we used to swim there on the beach.
Mm,
There's other creeks that we swim in, and then there's going in the countryside what we call outings. Like in the 60s and late 50s and 60s and early 70s, to travel in the country, we used to travel by train. They don't have train again.
mm.
We travel in the countryside by train, and when we come from the city, we are like the kings of the country. You know, the folks in the country at that time used to really, and looking back to the days of being enslaved, the country has always been a special place, and a lot of us moved to the city because there's always better opportunities, better schooling, better health systems, and so forth. So a lot of people of African descent, we run to the city and we live in
Mm,
the city. But for me, the country is that special place that going in what we call the back dams.
nice.
Ga- yeah, Guyana has an interesting history of being one of the first enslaved communities in the world who bought villages. When after emancipation, I think is in 1834, 1836, um, we started working as indentured laborers. The money we got from that work, we pull it together. This is the real African experience. We pull that money together and we bought the first village, the village of Victoria.
That's
Now,
beautiful.
this is historic for people of African descent to show our self-determining way of living. And who knows, the ancestors must put it in me because I champion in Black food sovereignty, and it's about self-determination. So we bought these villages, and we bought one village, and we bought another village, and all along the coast, we were doing this. But all along the way, there was racial injustice.
Okay.
Sabotage these villages, the colonizers. Anytime you start making progress, they like to
Absolutely.
cut you down. You know what I mean? And you know how much acres of land we own in southern United States in the 1900s, and now we probably own just a few acres. And you want to talk about Jim Crow and all these hindrances to our power. But other than that, as I said, growing up in Guyana with all those tribulations, it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. I would say with music,
Hmm.
my brothers are so talented. I was so scared to come after them.
Now, where did they learn
Honestly,
from? Was it your father? Was he the one that
my
taught?
father, I now realize my father, he was the architect.
Okay.
My mother played piano too. So this is two folks who had music and the ability to play music. And they you know, they they're born in the 19 teens, like 1916 and 19 I think it's 1918. And they got the opportunity to do music. And to get into music at that time in a colonial period, you got either you attached to a church or some part of your family got some money.
Hmm.
And but they were in the church. My mother played piano, and my father he was the organist and he was the choir master. And I realized how my brothers got this tremendous talent. Now, I'm the youngest. It so happened that when I was growing up, my father left the church. These colonial churches started to deteriorate, and we got independence, and it's a whole new day and reckoning when we got independence in 1966.
Hmm.
The leader of the country, is someone who has been an architect of, I would say, one of the better policies of people of African descent moving forward as an independent country, where the motto is feed, clothe, and house yourself. That that impacted me very, very, very much because I was actually able to visit. It was a socialist country. Now socialist and America is a bad word,
Right.
and communist and America, it's wow, that is like
Absolutely.
you know. So it was a country that had a lot of challenges, but the leaders at that time, they had I would say the two main leaders, it is a country where ethnicity play a great part in the politics. There was the South Asians,
Okay.
and there was the people of African descent, and both parties that are led by these two great leaders, Chetty Jagan and Forbes Burnham. One was communist, that is the South Asian party, and one was socialist, that was the people of African descent. So I saw, and the people of African descent party, which is the PNC, they were in power. They got a chance to test their socialist agenda. And as I said before, it was about feeding yourself, clothing yourself,
Hmm.
and housing yourself. And I saw people building houses cooperatively. Like we talk about housing shortage, this housing shortage in North America and Canada is intentional because people, if you give them the resources, they're going to build their own houses. Give them resources and the expertise, they'd build a house to live in. There's
Right.
land, but it's about speculation and capitalism and all this BS that people are, unhoused and living on the street and, homeless. And so I saw people build a whole housing scheme called South Rumville, South Rumville, South East Rumville, and other places in the countryside by giving the effort. So and I grew up as a young musician, as a teenager, it was interesting that I see all these socialist development, but I never got involved. I was just
Okay.
a spectator. And it was good because I got a chance to observe.
Yeah,
And to some
definitely.
extent, I feel bad that I didn't get a chance to experience some of it because they had what we call national service. Because in Guyana, like three-quarters of the people live on the coast.
Okay.
And this is 83,000 square miles. So there's tons of Amazon rainforest, and we all live on the coast. Okay. And the idea of the national service is to get young people and go into the interior and experience it. I can't forget myself. I never got the opportunity to do that because I was the radical musician who just want to play music and
Uh-huh.
that's it. And because it was a cultural revolution, musicians were um never asked to do these things intentionally. Like if you work for the civil service, you got to go to it. Or if you want to go to university, you got to go to the national service. But I think for our development as people of African descent, we need these intentional developmental processes to move forward. We tend to move to the agenda of white supremacy where they did all these atrocities and they move forward and we're moving forward with them. But we need to move forward on our own self-determining pace of self-help, corporatism, and seeing what our community need to be self-determining. Because we when you look at Africa, people say it's underdeveloped. Well,
No,
climate change.
well, that's changing, and the wrong people that I think don't know about Africa are saying that because it's
Yeah,
definitely changing.
it's changing. But the thing about it, my sister, is that the change, when we look at it, the state of the world and climate change, this is not progress, this is not development. The indigenous people and people of African descent, we live in the villages, that is progress. That is the way the world move incrementally. When you look at capitalism in America, Europe, they destroy the world. So when people say, oh, they're backward, no, they're forward. This development, where you have all these fires and all these floods, that is backwardness.
Mm,
What we are doing in the villages with our little kitchen garden and self-sufficiency, with all these vanities of capitalism, that is progress.
wow. Well, let's talk a little bit about food because I want to make sure we get that in there. Talk
Okay.
about the food as you were growing up because obviously that's playing a role as you get older.
Yes. Yes. Well, my mother, there's a school called Carnegie. The colonial days, they got you with a knife and fork and certain things they got to know. And and we tend to, for instance, you go to an Ethiopian restaurant, they see them eating with their hands. It's our whole holistic traditional way. But the Europeans come and say you gotta go and get your knife and fork, and then they learn you to make certain things. But my mom went to that school, and it gives her the knowledge to do menus and recipes and
Mhm.
but cook the traditional foods. So she was a super duper cook. Like
Mm.
when she cooked, before the food finished, these four young fellas eating all this stuff before they even reach the table. I mean how it's so delicious.
Wow.
So
Is there a national dish
she
of Guyana at all?
yes, actually Guyana have, this is a land of six peoples. Let me start with people of African descent,
Hmm.
South Asians,
Hmm.
the Chinese, the First Nation, the indigenous people.
Hmm.
And these two other last two is very interesting. The Portuguese
Mm.
and what we call Anglo-Saxons, white folks. I don't know how they difference between Portuguese and, but it says six people.
Okay.
But who knows, maybe have more than that. But each people had their own dish. And for sure I could remember the ones I can remember very clearly is the indigenous people. They have a dish called, we call it pepper pot,
Oh yeah.
and it's made, it's like, it's a beautiful beautiful dish, and it's usually made with what we call catch rib. They take cassava, because cassava has
Hmm.
some indigeneity to indigenous people, where they grate it and they take and they make they squeeze it and they make a milk, and then they boil it till it come to a thick texture similar to, I would say, like honey or maple syrup, and it have that same color of um uh, it's darker than maple syrup, but very dark color. I don't know if you're familiar with molasses.
Yes.
It looks just
Hmm.
like molasses, that
Hmm.
color. And what they do, they they boil, they put seasoning, they put some of the cashew and in the water, and they boil meat, all kinds of wild meat. And the most beautiful thing about it is that because of the nature of catch rib, it preserves the food. So they keep putting the meat in the pot. They go on the hunt, put the meat in the pot and boil it, and it keep boiling, and it's not spoiling. So it become the indigenous um, food of the indigenous people. The people of African descent, these people, they love ground provision all over. Yams. That's why we have these yam festivals in Africa. We retain a lot of that in the Caribbean.
I love
I would
that.
say the experience.
Love it.
You could see it in the people from Jamaica. You could see it from people from Haiti. We always eat ground provisions.
Mhm.
So in Guyana now, the national dish for people of African descent is what you call metamji.
Mm.
As a person of expertise in food, I gotta find out where that name come from. I never questioned it. Metamji. And metamji in different places, like in Jamaica, they call it oil down.
Oh
But basically, you would cook the ground provisions like cassava, yam, sweet potato, edos, tanya, and you even use the what we call it Irish potato. That
yeah.
is
Hmm.
the normal potatoes, and they would boil it in cassava milk, and it would boil down with this texture, and it would boil, and then you would see like these white, translucent, silvery. That is how the coconut oil starting to turn into coconut milk start turning into oil,
Okay.
but it all go into the vegetables, and then my mom, they would just about to simmer, she'd put okras at the top, and then she'd fry some fish separately. This dish is like, people hardly cook this dish these days because
Oh
it's so
wow.
extensive, and then on top of that, they would boil an egg just before it finished. I said, what? When I go to school, I come from school and I eat that meal. I don't want to go back to school.
Oh, is
People
that
have a
heavy,
word.
huh?
Yes, I'm gonna say something, and if you want to cut it, you can cut it out. But we say when you finish that meal, you get niggeritis because you don't want to you don't want to do anything. You just want to just relax because
Wow.
it's so filling, you know.
But
And I
you
was
said
like,
that it's not, it's one of those sort of heritage or those dishes that is so labor intensive, right? I remember being in
Yes.
Barbados and they have, oh, I want to say, is it cuckoo or is it a dish
Cuckoo.
too that they were like,
Cuckoo, yeah.
it's, they're trying to teach the younger generation because again, it's labor intensive with the arm and everything. But those are so important to keep alive.
I know, and to tell you the truth, my sister, is that it you hardly find people cooking it. Like if you ask the young
Mm.
people, they never cook MSG.
Have they heard
And
of it?
huh?
I said, have they even heard of it? Oh,
Well, that's true because for me, I know even for myself, I don't cook it as often. Okay, and another very important part of the dish too is what you call the duff. In Jamaica, you call them dumplings,
okay.
but the dumplings and the duff is two different um, flour based um, ingredients that they put inside. Because the duff, it I don't know, I can't remember if my mother put yeast of it, but it swells up. Other
Okay.
the dumplings stay hard. This one and that dish is like wow. And it's sad to know that we don't have the time. 'Cause everything is about
Mhm.
fast.
Yeah.
Fried rice,
Yeah.
like like but value in the meal, we need to keep that as heritage, man.
Absolutely.
But there's another dish that also comes from people of African descent. It's what we call cook up cook up rice,
Okay.
and it's usually rice and peas boiled in coconut milk. Coconut milk always play an important part
I
of creating
see.
this delicacy of any foods.
Mhm.
Whether you put
Mhm.
it in a stew, whether you put it in rice, whether you put it in porridge, coconut milk, and now you're seeing coconut milk is everywhere. Making cheese, making milk, making
Mhm.
yogurt. So the coconut milk in the cook up rice. But not only rice, we also do cook up with vegetables, especially things like callaloo, things like okra. You can
Mhm.
make cook up rice with anything, but most special is cook up rice with split peas.
With split
And
peas.
I think this
Wow.
comes I think this comes from days of being enslaved. I just say in America, soul food. Because traditionally they would boil the peas, then they'd put pigtail, cow foot. They put these
Oh.
things, these thrown away stuff that Europeans say, oh, they don't
Yes.
want that. You say,
Yes.
okay, give it to us, and we make it into delicacy.
Okay.
And so you put these, especially pigtail, you put it inside, and you boil the peas and the pigtail. You put the coconut milk and the peas, and then you put the rice,
Okay.
and you boil it with a good texture. Like any rice, you want to make sure it's not too soft. You don't want it too soft; just want it the right texture. That is like wow. I grew up eating. There's a famous guy they call Hunt Cook Up,
Mhm.
where he used to sell. Used to get these big pots of cook up rice. You know what I mean? And we live in the neighborhood and just go. And sometimes you get cooked rice like for 15 cents.
Wow.
Okay, you
Now,
cook
is that on the
and
menu? So if I go today, will I find that on the menu of various
you
restaurants?
would you would find cook up, but I don't think you will find metamg. Metamg,
Right.
you got to make the special effort to
Yeah, we got to
identify.
find somebody. Somebody, yeah,
Yeah,
somebody has to
definitely
make
you got
that.
to yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Wow.
Well, hopefully these interviews would highlight the importance of that particular dish.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So let's talk briefly. We're going to start to head on out of the country into Canada. Tell me a little bit about your musician days. So obviously that's what you focused on. And then when did your career sort of really just take off?
Okay, so I left Guyana. Around I always get mixed up 77, 78. And I was so lucky. As when I left Guyana, I was embracing. I became a vegan, and I was embracing the traditional Rastafari.
Okay.
And within that tradition, it's getting popular right now, but for people of African descent in the Caribbean, Rastafari, they were eating vegan since the 1930s.
Mhm.
But it started getting popular in the 70s with reggae music, and so I started playing music and started focusing more on, I would say, Rasta music, roots music. Well, I was playing everything. I was playing a little bit of jazz, a little bit of funk, a little bit of R&B, a little bit of Latin. Because in Guyana we do everything. We play all kinds of music. But
And your
my
instrument of
focus was
choice?
my instrument of choice is the bass
Okay.
as a bass player.
All right.
As I said before, I was totally intimidated by my brothers. No apology, their excellence. So I settled, and so when I came to Canada, I was so happy to be introduced in the first 2 weeks. My sister-in-law cousin,
Okay.
we started talking. She said, "Oh, you're a Rasta man. I know the place I know where you need to go." And so she took me to this community center called Imican. It was a community center for immigrant Canadians,
Hmm.
and it was located in the largest public housing in Canada, a place called Regent Park. And it
Hmm.
was basically a community center to engage young people who there was a lot of crack and cocaine and a lot of weed, and there was a lot happening in the community that wasn't healthy for that community.
Right.
That was encouraging crime, and um, so when I went to the community center, they were now starting this band, this reggae band named Truths and Rights.
Okay.
And they were just about to start. They had started, but they were just rehearsing. So I sit in and I observe, and they said they're looking for a keyboard player. Now I could play basic keyboards, and because reggae music is more like they call it two cards, you just have to shuffle A and D or A and E, and I say, no, I think I could fit in that. I could play that. It so
Hmm.
happened, but my choice is to play bass. After the first rehearsal, where two bands were rehearsing, there's another band called Tropical Energy,
Okay.
and they were more established because there's this great musician from Jamaica. His name is Joe Cooper. Hail up Joe Cooper in Washington. Um, he had this band, and the bass player from Truth and Rights, he went over to play with the other band because he learned quicker, and so they needed a bass player, and I jumped in because I could play bass. Now,
Hmm.
I wasn't trying the keyboard, I'm not gonna play bass. So I started playing bass with them, and this band just took off.
Wow.
And it took off for many reasons. It took off because the environment that we got the opportunity to start rehearsing in this community center with some cool young black radical graduates from the Ryerson, now Toronto Metropolitan University. These young people were like steeped in Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey, and so it created an environment for us as young people that there are the instruments, there's a kitchen to cook your vegan food. So we had a self-contained perfect environment. So we would rehearse sometimes. When I came up, I decided to go to the college. I was studying radio and TV.
Okay.
So I would go to school in the day, and then I'd come on and rehearse. Sometimes I stay at the rehearsal space, stay overnight, get a cup of coffee or something in the morning, go back to school in the day. And I did that for the first 6 months.
Okay.
And by that time, the band got tight,
Mm.
and we started gigging. Then politics, the community center closed down, but by that time we were on our own as a band. So we got firm foundation. The roots was really settled, and we got super popular. Like we were doing just original music. You know what I mean? We got a chance to meet the great Bob Marley. We got a
Nice.
chance to play with Dennis Brown. We got a chance to travel, especially in Eastern Canada.
Okay.
Like we play in some places in Quebec. We were the first, not only the first reggae band, we were the first black band to ever played in this village
Wow.
in Quebec. So we had a very interesting career, and but like anything in Canada, you could reach so far. You gotta go to America. But America was not the mecca for reggae music.
Hmm.
So we got a chance to go down to South Carolina. We played the Spalato Jazz Festival, and we play some extent around Detroit, and in some other smaller bands I had.
What about
But
New York? Any opportunities around that corridor, especially New York?
New York still wasn't the reggae place.
Okay.
It got to be the appropriate, like Nashville and country western
Gotcha.
music,
And then
and
no Florida either?
no Florida, because
Okay.
these places are now coming into their own with reggae music, but it wasn't. Like even Bob Marley didn't really break through till after he passed away in
Right.
America.
True that. Yep.
You know,
Hmm.
so the place that we need to go, I always lament if they need to go in the United Kingdom.
Okay. Yeah.
because it's not Jamaica that break Bob Marley, it's the UK that break Bob Marley. And so after a while, we just kind of disbanded. Some people went to Africa. I went back home to Guyana,
Okay.
and we stay in touch. But that was that. I went back home to Guyana in 19 like 89, 87, 89, and because I wanted I got a son at that time, and I
Hmm.
wanted him to taste how I grew up in Guyana,
Yeah.
and even more so to taste living in the countryside. So I went into the countryside, and and I stayed there for about 3 or 4 years.
Hmm.
I grew food in the backyard. I live very
Oh, I love it.
self-contained because I got the knowledge now. Maybe we were selling coconut oil, and I was doing things that at the same time I was reading and studying, and then we decided to come back to Toronto. When I come back to Toronto, I realized a lot of the musicians, some of the musicians that got into drugs, and so I decided, you know what, I just go to school. I
Mm.
went to school and studied business, and my final project for those 3 to 4 years was to set up what we call a vegan restaurant and a club. Because I said, okay, I know music, I know the landscape, and this whole vegan something is it's getting popular because right now black vegans is the most fastest growing population in North
Correct,
America.
correct, correct. So let
So
me
I
ask
was
you
I
this
was
question, if you don't mind. What was your reasoning for becoming a vegan?
as I said, it's affiliated with Rastafari.
Okay, all right.
The Rastafari have like three major mansions. When we say mansions, we talk about like Anglican, Catholic, Presbyterian, Baptist. These various mansions in the Christian tradition. So
Okay.
in Rastafari, you have the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Then you have 12 tribes of Israel.
Hmm.
Then you have Bobo Shanti. Then you have Nyabingi. Now, I would say I affiliate myself with the uh, theocracy Naibingi order.
Okay.
And within that, they have these principles and these dietary laws of being vegan. We call it the ITEL tradition, where
Yes, I've
they
heard of
eat
that.
food that
Hmm.
is natural, no meat. So this, when people think about black folks and veganism, they think about the hippies. No, 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 not the hippies. The hippies, they came after. They came late. They are the latter part. People always attach this whole plant-based diet to the hippie. No, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no,
Yes,
no.
we've talked. I've
Rastafari was
talked
living like
about
that.
that. Yep, it's been in the black
Yeah,
community for
with
a long
a
time.
long, long time. And even
Hmm.
in Africa too,
Yep.
using meat was rare. I mean, we really have a more plant-based diet. But European come and we want to eat all this and that. No, 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 no. We had a plan. We had a balanced diet. The reason why we could last through slavery is because we built a last.
Right.
Okay, and we built a last because of what we eat. Go you what you eat, you know what I mean? And we bring so my vegan tradition come
Gotcha.
as part of the Rastafari tradition.